it was because Professor Eugene Sensenig contacted me, and he has come to Caux a number of times, and he told me about the hikes which you are taking to Musadagh and the way that you're exploring your history. And he said these Armenian Lebanese wish to meet with some Turks, and Caux has the atmosphere, the spirit, which I think will help this encounter to be successful, because it is a stressful encounter when you Armenians meet Turks. So he said, could we do it at Caux? And I was coordinating a conference here, so I said, of course, that is what Caux is for, to bring people together. When you feel you are blocked politically, you don't know how to, then a community action is not a political action, but it can bring a lot of change.
I recognize that it happened. I've read about it, I've seen the historical sources. It's a big tragedy against the human race. I didn't know about the Armenian genocide while growing up, and when I heard about it and learned about it, it really made me angry and upset that my fellow, some, not all of them, but Turkish people or people with Turkish origins are denying it. And I really wanted to show there are also like a lot of people who are, recognizing this and feeling sorry for this and want to put effort to, bring the word out there.
Every year it's different. Every year you learn something new. And I'm really happy to be here for the third time. So it was quite interesting, and in comparison to the previous year, to last year, we had tense moments in the beginning. We had, people arguing, which is normal. I guess it was the expression of the prejudices that we have for each other. And then I'm really happy to see that it passed. In these 3-4 days it passed, which is a big success, and this is a hope that we will be continuing doing this in our communities as well, to help our community members to break their stereotypes and prejudices against Turkish people, Kurdish people, and showing more solidarity for those who suffer nowadays in Turkey, in current Turkey, and who are willing to stand with us, both for the recognition of the Armenian genocide. I'm hoping that this is not gonna stay only in Caux, and we are going to continue this, whether in Lebanon, in Armenia, in Turkey, or maybe in another neutral zone, and spread the seeds that we could create in this dialogue.
For us specific from the Netherlands, we as diaspora, we have a safe space. Like if you were in Turkey, you might be persecuted, and in the Netherlands we can organize things without this pressure. We can organize ourselves, we can talk about topics that are considered dangerous in our home countries. Second thing is also, we in diaspora, we are also sometimes seen as the other. So we know what it is to feel, to be a minority. Some of us find it also easier to empathize with each other's situation.
Yesterday I visited a Turkish Kurdish Dialogue session, and I found it not only interesting but useful for me. I can compare the situation which Turkey is having now with the Ukrainian one, which we are having now with Russia, and I think that event and the discussion was really needed, useful. I mean, because people are suffering, they have the same problems, but probably if they are not together, if they don't have even opportunity to understand other side and to think about other side, and by peaceful discussions they can find the right way. They can find the way to meet other people and to understand them, not to be angry, not to hate them, because in Ukraine we didn't have opportunity even to meet any Russian people, and our government, they made a visa regime with Russia from the time of the conflict in the eastern part of Ukraine. What was the most impressive, the last part, when two girls, they hugged each other, and it made me somehow thoughtful about what I can do, how I can accept Russian people, how I can forgive them.
Well, I can tell you one of the most important things that I learned here just this week was that my story was the same story as somebody from Chad, was the same story as somebody from Palestine or Israel, was the same story as people from Lebanon who were rebels. And that, to me, being able to understand that we have the same struggle, while it may be different in different ways, that we're fighting all over the world against other people that we don't really know, that we're afraid of, that are really similar to us. And what I would urge both sides to do is start with what they understand about each other to be true. And sit down and find out how they can work together to either coexist, to live peacefully, to recognize things that have happened in the past that have gone unrecognized, and try to build a better future. Anytime somebody takes a bold action that nobody's seen before, like coming together with the enemy, those people are often seen as traitors. But the reality is those are the bravest people on the battlefield, because they're willing to walk across and to sit and understand what many people think is the enemy.
In the first session, there were a lot of emotions, mostly negative, and there were some attempts to persuade the others that something bad had happened. But on the second day, it was more like reflecting, I think we are thinking like that, but maybe the problem is this. And this one, it wasn't really finger pointing, but just thinking about maybe the issue with us, and it happened with both sides. So I really like the transformation. It usually takes a lot of time to change pointing the other to pointing yourself. I think that was the most striking thing.
I now understand the perspective of specifically the Lebanese Armenian perspective, which is, I think, different from Armenians from Armenia or Armenians that have moved from Armenia to the Netherlands. Their perspective is a little bit different. Now I know how they feel in Lebanon as an Armenian who had to flee from their country, from origin. That was really interesting to see the story behind the Lebanese Armenians. That's something that I learned, which I didn't know.
The Armenian Turkish and Kurdish dialogue is seen as a pioneering effort in extinguishing the flames of hate between past and present enemies. And Caux is such a unique place in facilitating this act of dialogue and peace resolution.
I wrote my thesis about the Armenian genocide. I knew everything from the theory, from the books. But these personal encounters, that's really was a gap in my life, and in Caux I can fill in that gap. Not totally, of course, but some way. The first day was really a bit emotional, and there were some little fights, some verbal fights, but. I think that was also good. Of course, it was good because the next day we reflected on our behavior of the day before, and then we reached another level of understanding. We talked about each other's history with respect to each other's situation, context. I think we can set some goals. Also, the Australian story of John Bond is really interesting, because he said the government doesn't acknowledge the history of the Aboriginals, but the people do, the communities do. I think that's a big example for us, especially for Turks, to maybe do a similar thing in the diaspora, in Turkey. It's already being done, but on a little scale. So we should start from the bottom up, and hopefully our leaders will listen and come to each other and acknowledge each other's history.